The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles.
Hello, Charles. Do you know who the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States is? The effective leader of the lower house?
Some McCarthy. What's his name?
Kevin
McCarthy, yes.
Is no longer the Speaker.
What? When did this happen?
He's been dumped. Guess who dumped him?
But that never happens. Okay, so who dumped him? Well, but wait a minute. The Republicans have the majority, but it's a slender majority. Have people? Wait, but Republicans won't go over to the Democrats. What the fuck has happened?
We'll find out in a moment. And also take a look at Donald Trump's trip to court this week in a bit of an American update on today's Chaser Report.
Oh, they were great images. One for the ages.
So you might remember that Kevin McCarthy took an unprecedentedly long time to become Speaker of the House of Representatives after the Republicans won the lower house, the House of Representatives.
Yes.
In the Congress, it was only on the 15th ballot that he managed to get over the line. They subjected him to a ritual humiliation. And it's not the Democrats doing it. It's the radical Republicans, the House Freedom Caucus, the ultra MAGA crew, which is a very small number.
Yes.
But because the Republicans only won by a very slender majority last time, as you said, basically it meant that just a small handful of Republicans could hold the rest of them basically over a barrel.
They're like the fucking Greens.
Yeah, well, it almost is because, I mean, you might think, well, okay, like the Labor Party does, okay, we're all part of the same team. We'll just do what the majority of the team who's elected wanted to do. That's not how it works at all in America, where this tiny group, only 6 or 7 congressmen big, is able to basically force all this stuff. So they had McCarthy over a barrel, and the only reason that he became Speaker in the first place was by agreeing to a deal where at any point on any day in the future, any one member of Congress could call for a vote of no confidence effectively in the Speaker. So any single member
What a terrible deal.
could subject McCarthy to a vote. And he really wanted the gig, right? McCarthy's always wanted to be the Speaker. It was his lifelong dream. So in the end, he had to agree to this terrible deal where at any point, basically he could be broken up with. It would be as though you entered a relationship with your new girlfriend who said, look, at any moment, I'm allowed to have sex with somebody else. It doesn't matter. You've agreed to it in advance, you can do it. So that's what's happened. Matt Gaetz, who's the most radical of the radicals, the Florida congressman.
Isn't he the pedo?
Look, there was some accusations about relationships with underage. Who knows what really happened? Well, the House Ethics Committee's been investigating. The Department of Justice decided not to charge him, but he was accused of, sex trafficking as well as sexual relationships with minors. So a fantastic conservative Republican.
Sex trafficking, fucking hell. What? And he holds basically the balance of power in America.
He's the key guy. My favourite fact about Matt Gaetz is that he graduated from Niceville High School. Niceville, Florida is a real place. Nothing nice about Matt Gaetz. So Matt Gaetz says, look, Kevin McCarthy's word cannot be trusted, and he has pulled the pin. And even though the vast majority of Republicans voted to keep McCarthy and wanted McCarthy, that small rump of extremists voted no. And the Democrats weren't sure what to do. There was some talk of them supporting McCarthy and cutting a deal with him to keep him there to frustrate the House Freedom
what was their
Caucus.
deal that at any point
pull the pin?
They're allowed to pull the pin even more rapidly.
But under their new minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, they decided, no, we're not going to, we don't like Kevin McCarthy. We're not going to keep him in place. So he lost the vote. And therefore, the chair is vacant. There's a president pro tempore, basically a temporary person that was put in. This rule was put in after 9/11 in case the Speaker got assassinated rather than killed by his own. So Patrick McHenry's there, but his job is just to organise a vote for a new Speaker. We don't know who it's going to be. Who on earth will Matt Gaetz allow to be Speaker? McCarthy's not running again. Gaetz says he won't run. So it's hard to imagine who the majority of Republicans could agree on.
Look, I think the one policy that Matt Gaetz is really clear on is they need a candidate, a Speaker, who is pro-sex trafficking.
Yeah.
There's not enough pro-sex trafficking legislation coming through the Congress. There's not enough sort of decriminalisation of sex trafficking. They're the main issues, I think, that
well, this is the thing. The House
spring to mind.
The House Freedom Caucus, you might have thought was ultra-libertarian, right? But no, I think it's the freedom to sex traffic that they're most interested in, at least the Matt Gaetz wing of it. Yeah. And also, look, what is age but a number to Matt Gaetz? I don't think he even knew how young the child that he may or may not have slept with
Yes.
was. So there you go. So this whole thing is absolutely going on. And the reason, there were only 8 Republicans who voted against McCarthy, and yet that was enough to basically end his career, pretty much. He's not going to run again. He knows he can't win the
Oh,
votes.
right. Oh, okay. So this is his swan song.
Well, he may stick around, presumably, as a member of Congress, but he's not going to be in the leadership.
As a cuck.
Pretty much as a cuck.
Yeah.
So there's hundreds of other Republicans who are pro-McCarthy, in essence. Several hundred. And there's 8 who are against him. And the 8 got to win the day. And the reason for this, Charles, is because McCarthy did something that Matt Gaetz really objected to, and it wasn't pedo-related. What he did was he did a deal with the Biden administration and the Senate, which is controlled by Democrats, to keep the US government open. Now, this, you
what a
might recall,
sellout.
this happens every couple of years, particularly when the Republicans are involved.
I actually think it's to do with daylight savings. It
probably
happens
is.
about once every 6 months.
So, in essence, the House and Senate have to pass budget bills in order to fund the US government. And it shut down a few times. It shut down under Obama. I think it shut down under Bill Clinton as well. The Democrats tend not to use this threat when they control things, but the Republicans love saying,
Love a good shutdown.
you've got to shut down
Yes.
spending. The government spends too much.
Yes.
It's the swamp. It's all that. And
Yes.
so McCarthy, being a vaguely responsible human being, has tried to actually, keep the military paid and so on, and keep the military might get paid regardless, but keep things like the
Of
museums.
course the military
would
gets
get paid. Yeah, keep all that. Keep
It's
everything
just,
open.
it's just Social Security.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Things like that.
So it's very, very bad, but it also hurts the US economy massively, and it means that the US potentially, if it went on for long enough, couldn't pay their debts. So it had basically become a banana republic, in essence. That is not as important to Matt Gaetz.
And
as-
that hasn't already happened? Or it's
well,
just-
it came close. So they don't like McCarthy doing any sort of deal, basically. So what they want is someone who is going to be absolutely hardline and do everything that this very tiny number of 8 want.
And shut down the government.
Shut down the government.
Because of 8 people.
Whereas the rest of the Republicans want the deal and think that, well, at least the majority of them, I think, wanted the deal and actually wanted to keep the place open.
But just spitballing here, is the only way forward moderate Republicans to cut a deal with Democrats in order to cut the 8 Republicans out of the picture? Like, is there any other way forward? Because it sounds like these sort of extremist characters are not going to think anyone's good enough.
Well, I mean, some people say you don't negotiate with terrorists, right? But basically, yeah, it's very unsure what will happen. So the Democrats can make a deal for a moderate Republican speaker, but that would be very unusual. And they've already nominated their leader, Hakeem Jeffries, as their nominee.
But why wouldn't moderate Republicans are the problem, right? Like, it's the Republican Party that's got the problem.
Yeah, the problem
Why wouldn't
is entirely
they just
on the
appoint
Republicans.
Hakeem?
Well, because then they'd probably get primaried and lose their seats in the next election. So the Democrats are basically saying, look how dysfunctional. And their whole argument is they want to say, look, it's massively dysfunctional when the Republicans control the House, so don't vote for them. They love the dysfunction.
Yes, of
Right,
course.
now sitting back-
Everyone loves the dysfunction for different reasons.
Yes, that's
Yes.
right. So Matt Gaetz is basically, drooling over this as though it were a child, this situation. He's very, very happy with this scenario.
Yeah.
And the Democrats love it. But the ordinary Americans who might want, the government to function and to be able to actually use federal services without everything being shut down all the time. Not so good for them, but they don't matter to Matt Gaetz and his buddies, evidently.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're going to do. It's not clear whether some compromise candidate will come forward. And I just can't see, Charles, how any person, no matter who it is, could possibly keep the 8 extremists happy while also appealing to the rest of the Republicans.
Look, I'm wondering whether the best way forward for the planet is if the extremist Republicans get their way, the government gets shut down, they can't afford their bills, they default on their debt, and the monetary system collapses.
That's definitely the way to go.
I have a large amount of debt, and if
Oh,
the
and
monetary system collapses,
Then you can pay it off.
then
with
isn't
nothing.
it? It would just square it away.
Square it
Just-
away.
Yeah, just go
That's not a bad idea.
reset button. Let's start again.
I can see the virtue of that. So money doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
Well, that's one solution.
I think that's probably my favoured solution.
I can see why you'd like that.
Yeah.
Another option.
Not so good for the people who are owed money. See, I owe my sister money at the moment.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
So
okay.
that would be good to not have
Can't
to
you
pay
just
her
not
back.
pay her back and she gets another honour from the government?
Probably.
A higher Order of Australia level?
I deduct $100 for every honour she gets
that's
from
right.
the government.
So another option that comes to mind, and again, just spitballing here, off the top of my head, is wouldn't it be possible for the island where Jeffrey Epstein had his little resort, the Epstein Island.
Yes.
Couldn't that secede and have
Matt Gates.
Matt Gates
becomes
could move there.
the king.
He could become the king of Epstein Island.
Of Epstein Island.
Yeah, and basically, or he can fly his buddies there.
Yes.
They can have a libertarian paradise, which will be where they can do whatever they want. Won't be paradise for the young people of the island. It would actually be awful.
Yeah,
so they have to evacuate anyone under the age of 19. But he can have a little libertarian fantasy land over there without inconveniencing 300 million fellow Americans.
Yeah. No,
Do you think he'd go for it?
I prefer the collapse of the monetary system, to be honest. Because I think Matt Gates, the best scenario for him is surely jail. Like, isn't that where you're supposed to put sex traffickers?
I mean, the Department of Justice decided not to charge him. I don't know why. That seems like a very sad situation to me. I think that's a very big mistake. Yeah. Without knowing the facts.
Yeah, without
knowing the facts, but just looking at him.
Yeah.
You know how you can just tell? And it's not in any way a judicial process.
No.
You can just tell, can't you?
A bit sus.
A little bit sus.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So that's where we are. So Sus Boy has basically held the US government over a barrel. I don't know how it's going to be resolved. They tend to just find some sort of weird last-minute deal to stop the whole thing falling over.
Because part of the problem is, like, when a lot of America's controversies are quite spectacular, right? Like, the Trump gets hauled before court or something like that, or 9/11, like terrific television. Whereas these government shutdown ones are just a little bit procedural, like too procedural to be interesting.
Yeah,
There's
the West Wing did a good job of telling the story when this happened, but no, it's not must see TV, and I think that's a problem. And Charles, really, what this teaches us is that democracy is inconvenient. I mean, the US is always going on about freedom and democracy and all this kind of stuff. This is not a system any other country would want to pick up on.
This is nothing to do with democracy, Dom. This is. I mean, America hasn't been a democracy for years. This is plutocracy. This
is the thing. I mean, if you're China and you're looking at the system and maybe there's the odd reformer who thinks maybe we should give the people more rights. Looking at America right now, you're going to be like, fuck no.
Yeah.
If anything, let's make it more authoritarian. And let's lock up, by the way, people who are accused of sex trafficking.
Yes.
That might be a good thing to do.
Yeah. Uyghurs and sex traffickers.
Exactly right. So in a moment, we'll look at the other person who's been accused of sexual impropriety in the Republican Party, Donald Trump.
The Chaser Report. More news, less often.
So, Charles, you mentioned Donald Trump being his little trip to court. Now, he's very good friends with Matt Gates. They're both from Florida these days. They're very close, kind of ultra MAGA Republicans. Donald Trump previously supported Kevin McCarthy, but of course, as with Donald Trump, there's no loyalty, and he's just left him twisting in the wind. He hasn't really said anything so far about this particular crisis. Presumably, they should make Donald Trump Speaker of the House of Representatives. And
yes, because it doesn't have to be a House of Representative person.
I can't remember Congress. I don't know that it does necessarily.
I think
so. All they need to do is put him as Speaker.
Could I put up my hand?
You could. No, you actually couldn't because you're not eligible to become president. So the thing about the Speaker that's really important, as also dramatised in the West Wing,
line of succession.
Number 3.
Yes.
So if Donald Trump became Speaker of the House, right?
Yes.
And then he's probably the only person who could unify the Republicans, to be honest.
Yep.
Then you just killed Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Well, Biden would die of old age.
Yeah. So inevitably.
Within the next week or so.
You do that, get rid of Kamala.
Kamala Harris, what would happen to her?
Oh, she'd just fade away. No one would notice.
Right.
As per, she's one of the most vice president-y of vice presidents that we've had.
Yeah, she's the Dan Quayle of vice presidents.
And then Donald Trump would be president.
Yes,
as he rightfully is, having won the 2020 election.
That's a really good idea. That's the sort of backdoor presidency.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
And then he wouldn't run next time. Well, he probably still would.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's look at why he was in court. Now, this is a really interesting situation because you might recall, Charles, that Donald Trump is facing 4 separate lots of criminal charges. We've discussed them on the podcast before. What was there? There was the document scandal. There was the business in Georgia, where he and his team allegedly tried to pressure election officials into...
You don't need to say allegedly.
I don't need to say allegedly, no. Where he and his buddies...
were recorded.
Were literally
organising a conspiracy.
Telling the Secretary of State to find more votes. That's number 2. It's so hard to keep track of them all. There was the paying a porn star a business, and then the small matter of responsibility for the January the 6th attack on the Capitol that left people dead and so on. So 4 separate things. But this is a separate case. This is an allegation of fraud being brought by the the Attorney General in the state of New York,
Yes.
who wants a $250 million settlement, Letitia James, because of Donald Trump's habit, which he's admitted to, and which people within the Trump organization have mentioned, particularly Michael Cohen, his former lawyer, of just making up valuations of things.
Yes. Look, I'm going to surprise you here, Dom.
Yeah?
But I actually agree with Donald Trump's arguments on this case.
Oh, really?
Yes. Because I don't know whether you want to run through the allegations, but I've seen that case. I've been watching the trial very closely. I think everyone should have a right to be able to value assets at whatever quantity they want, and I want you to know that. I want my creditors to know that. I think the solvency of the chaser is very much dependent.
Yeah,
on
actually,
that.
that's probably true. Yeah. So the chaser, which as we all know is $1 billion.
Multi-billion. Yeah.
So basically, what he did was when he got loans, say from major banks, I think Deutsche Bank was one of the people that loaned him money. There was a massive valuation given, and when you have a very high valuation of a business, you get favourable terms, you get better interest rates, and so on. And they basically cut you a better deal to try and get your business. But there were lots of things that he simply lied about. And one of my favourites is that he said that his triplex, his 3-level apartment in Trump Tower, was 30,000 square feet. It was 10. He just accidentally lost 20,000 square feet of his own apartment. You'd think you'd know roughly how big your own house was, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that does seem like a blatant lie. But don't you think it's sort of Deutsche Bank's responsibility to do their due diligence?
I mean, the Australian, if you try and get a loan in Australia, they go and actually value your assets and get a separate valuation.
Yeah, that's right. They don't rely on you saying, well, I reckon it's worth $100 billion.
And one of my favourites is Mar-a-Lago. So Mar-a-Lago, according to the Palm Beach County assessor, they estimated the value of it at about between $18 and $27 million, which seems fairly small for a major kind of resort. But the thing is, you can't do anything with it. It's a heritage property. You basically can't touch it. You certainly can't redevelop it. Trump's valuation was between $426 and $612 million. So basically,
yes, but
20 times what the assessor valued it at.
No, but the argument that he has about that is that his involvement in the Mar-a-Lago made it basically an artwork, that essentially it had the same qualities as an artwork. And he actually, in court, his lawyer said that it was like a Mona Lisa valuation. The very fact that it's owned by Donald Trump massively inflates the value of the property.
So these are the same lawyers that were fined by Justice Engeron for basically making ridiculous arguments that he'd previously told them not to make. So the fascinating thing about this is that the facts of the case was so unambiguous that the judge just made a ruling.
Oh,
so
really?
There's not actually a trial to work out the truth. Judge Arthur Engeron has already found that Donald Trump and the other defendants were liable for fraud. To which Donald Trump said, "I demand a jury trial. This is so unfair." His lawyers had not asked for a jury when they had the chance. And it's not usual to have juries for this sort of trial. But yeah, his point was it's so open and shut that it's just a question of the extent of the damages.
Yes,
right? Because he's already guilty. So the Attorney General James wants the $250 million, but also that he and his sons be barred from running businesses in New York. And he may lose Trump Tower over this because can't run a business in New York anymore, would have to sell all of his assets there. It also really raises the question, Charles, of whether the guy's got $250 million. This is a guy who always says he's a billionaire and worth all these billions. But a lot of people have said he might not actually be a billionaire.
So it might be like he's got $10,000 in the bank, but he said, "Oh no, that's like I got $300 billion
as a work of art."
Yeah,
because the $10,000 he's got in the bank is owned by Donald Trump, and that means it's worth billions of dollars.
Yeah.
How are we not doing this for the Chaser?
I think we should.
The Chaser is a work of art. I mean, basically,
I think our listener numbers are a work of art.
I mean, the thing that's, you know how people talk about elaborate frauds, right?
Yes.
They never get credit for how elaborate they are and the beauty and the creativity of some of the stories that are told.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't seem like an elaborate fraud, though. This seems like a very open and shut fraud.
I mean, when you think back on Enron, no one really said how creative their accounting was. Like, people talk about creative accounting as though it's a bad thing.
Yes, exactly. It's art.
And if you traded it, hung it in a gallery, if you hung, I don't know, Mar-a-Lago in a gallery, maybe it'd be worth a lot more.
I mean, I think this this gets so many people I know out of real pickles.
Yeah.
So essentially, what you're saying is, when we file our tax returns over the next few months,
Yeah.
we should declare ourselves artists.
You should, absolutely.
Tax artists.
Tax artists. and also, I mean, this gives me a different sense of the people. You know how it's quite common in Australian elections to draw a penis on the ballot paper. It's done quite a lot.
Which is art.
Which is art. I mean, and this is the question, and we have to be careful. I think there's laws about people advocating that people vote informal. Don't vote informal. But if you do, you're going to draw a penis, sign it, and get it valued.
Yes, exactly.
You're an artist. So Donald Trump, so he could have massive negative consequences even before any of the criminal trials come to pass.
So this has been a really good news. Usually we have a really dreary podcast, Dom.
Oh.
But this has been wonderful news. There's chaos and dysfunction in US Congress. That's just fun to watch. And Donald Trump is finally a white man who's rich and narcissistic and powerful is finally meeting up with a consequence. A consequence.
Would you like me to just tie it all kind of in a knot with a final fact? I wasn't really sure where to put this in, but I thought we should mention it in the podcast. It's a bit of news that broke in the past week.
Oh, yeah.
That I think will just give you a sense of perspective on this story, which is that reports from climate models developed in the UK. The first ever supercomputer climate model produced by scientists at the University of Bristol. Do you know what the future of the planet is? Do you remember how there was a massive supercontinent at one point called Pangaea, where all of the land masses joined together? Yeah. That's going to happen again in 250 million years. It will be extremely hot, dry, and completely uninhabitable for humans and mammals. So it will be so hot that none of us could possibly survive. So whatever they decide about Donald Trump, if you play the long game, none of it matters. We're all going to die.
Yeah, that's true. That's very nature. We should actually be optimistic because none of it actually matters. There's no reason for being anxious or...
Mate, in light of this, does the House of Representatives in the US even need a speaker? Do we even need a president?
No.
Shouldn't we just go and wait for all the land masses to join back together in a boiling torment?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, what it means is, if your picadillo is sex trafficking, then sex traffic away while the world burns. Nothing really matters.
Federal Police note that this was Charles Firth saying this. And Charles, I definitely suggest you take the same approach to your debts. You should write to all the people you owe money to and say, look, in light of the fact that in 250 million years, all the continents are going to join together in a fiery mess, this doesn't matter.
Yeah, the monetary system doesn't matter.
There you go. But to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because that does matter a lot. Our gear is from Rode. We're part of the Iconoclast Network. Catch you tomorrow.